The diplomatic station, Equilibrium's Edge, had hosted many high-stakes conferences, but few began with 38 species nervously pretending they weren't glancing at the human. Ambassador Elias Keene, Earth's official liaison to the Galactic Confederation, sat quietly at his assigned position, seat 39B, far enough from any important negotiations to suggest harmlessness, yet just close enough to overhear something sensitive by accident. He was average height, average build, standard dark suit. His facial expression could only be described as politely attentive, with the threat level of a particularly dull spreadsheet, which made him, to the assembled delegates, completely terrifying. "Are we still pretending the human isn't dangerous?" asked Counselor Illick, a 10-foot-tall exoskeletal horror from a gravity world so intense that chairs were classified as luxury items. "They are adorable," Ambassador Narell of the Plumed Accord chirped, blinking 7 eyes at once. "They bring snacks to meetings. Once one offered me caffeine as a sign of peace." "They offered me caffeine," muttered Minister Dozek of the Chlorine Collective. "I haven't slept in 6 cycles." "They once gave me a plant," said Ambassador Drenar of the Michael Consortium, "then apologized for the metaphor. I'm still uncertain what message I was meant to receive." "They issued a trade agreement," said Sarek of the Unified Banking Bloc, "where every clause benefits both parties, yet somehow benefits Earth more. We suspect sorcery or actuarial sciences." The discussion, theoretically about planetary trade tariffs, had, like most recent meetings, devolved into whispered assessments of the human threat level. Elias did not speak. He took notes. Occasionally he looked up and nodded, softly, politely, as if he were attending a gardening seminar. He had a reputation. There had been the Brinari Coalition incident, resolved in 3 questions. The twin crises of the Zaltari mergers, where Elias had introduced the phrase graceful recession into the galactic lexicon. The Galthari feud? A smile, a spreadsheet, and an offhand quote about entropy had collapsed their entire justification for war. That was when he arrived. Counselor Thrash of the Dravari entered the chamber with the confident posture of a creature who had never lost a fight, and assumed that statistics were a personal insult. He stood nearly 8 feet tall, crystalline forearms gleaming under the chamber lights. 4 of them, each sculpted by evolution for combat. Or, as Dravari scholars put it, conversation, resolution. The Dravari did not believe in ambiguity. Their language had no passive voice. Their culture had no concept of polite disagreement, only postponed confrontation. His eyes fixed immediately on Elias. "You," Thrash said, ignoring all diplomatic niceties like greetings, protocol, or common sense. "I challenge the human." A hush fell over the room, broken only by the faint buzz of Elias's stylus finishing a sentence. He looked up, calmly. "Pardon?" Thrash flexed all 4 arms in a gesture that the translator interpreted as formal declaration of superiority ritual. "You sit here with your fragile limbs and your soft skin and your polite bureaucratic noises. The Confederation indulges your presence, but I demand proof. Prove to us you belong." "No offense," whispered Counselor Reg of the Ulari symbionts, "but your species keeps doing this. Challenging them. Every time it ends poorly. Sometimes for the building." "I do not fear herbivores," Thrash replied. I don't think they are herbivores," muttered Reg. Elias closed his notepad. I see. It wasn't a threat. It wasn't bravado. It was the sound of a man mentally filing away yet another diplomatic incident to be reported under subheading 4C, Accidental Species Misunderstanding, resulting in unscheduled violence. Combat chamber? He asked. Combat chamber, Thrash confirmed. The combat platform was circular, neutral, and tastefully lit. Designed for ritualized dueling between species of wildly varying sizes and anatomy, it had hosted everything from acidic slimes to gravity-controlling philosophers. Today, it hosted a human. Elias stepped onto the platform in loose-fitting exercise clothes that looked suspiciously like standard-issue gym wear. No armor, no enhancements, no weapons. Thrash, in contrast, gleamed like a monument to excessive confidence, flexing his forearms as if to remind the spectators how many ways he could win. Begin, said the moderator. Thrash lunged. Elias stepped sideways, not dramatically, not in a blur, just precisely enough to not be where Thrash had expected him to be. This happened several times. After the third miss, Thrash roared, "Stand still!" Elias did, and when the 4 crystalline arms came in, he moved, not backward, but inward, and applied what humans refer to as leverage. Thrash's momentum carried him into his own elbow, then the floor, then the wall. The crowd went quiet. He tried again, different angles, different tactics, roars, swings, and every time Elias slipped past. Sometimes he pressed a nerve, sometimes a pressure point, sometimes nothing at all. Until the realization dawned, he wasn't fighting to win. He was demonstrating control. Thrash, to his credit, yielded. It was the sort of yield one makes when lying in a small crater of one's own making, while a human offers unsolicited physical therapy advice. Pressure point here, Elias was saying, tapping lightly on Thrash's shoulder joint. Disrupts motor control without causing permanent damage. Good for de-escalation. Ambassador Narell whispered, "He's teaching him? He's explaining how he beat him," Dozic replied, eyes wide. "He studied our anatomies, all of ours. Why would he? Because he thought it might come up." Across the arena, one of the Mycol delegates was quietly updating a strategic threat dossier. Another was sketching Elias's stance, trying to determine its biomechanical implications. In the silence that followed, 38 species quietly opened threat assessment dossiers and moved humans from minor concern to philosophical risk. Later that evening, unofficial meetings were held in quieter corners of the station. Security feeds recorded phrases such as unquantifiable threat projection and tactical minimalism as psychological warfare. Ambassador Drenar hosted a roundtable on human persistence, cultural, psychological, and tactical dimensions. The panel lasted 6 hours and resulted in 3 resignations and 1 species-wide moratorium on caffeine imports. Thrash, meanwhile, requested medical clearance and then asked Elias for the name of his trainer. Elias responded with a smile, "You wouldn't believe me." When asked later what had gone wrong, Thrash said, "He didn't win the fight. He opted out of its premise." The Confederation updated its records. Category Pink was retired. A new category was introduced. Persistence Class, Adaptive Predator, Approach with Strategic Caution. Only humans occupied that category. Elias Keene resumed his position in seat 39B, pen in hand, notepad open, smiling politely. Several delegates filed urgent updates to their homeworlds. Intelligence bureaus issued quiet orders to begin cultural infiltration assessments. Planetary defense councils rewrote their species risk charts. Thrash, now an unofficial Dravari human liaison, would later describe the human combat method as deeply inefficient, psychologically unnerving, and disturbingly educational. He also began taking yoga. Galactic analysts quietly added a new policy to the Confederation's internal training documents. Under no circumstances should you challenge the human, and the universe wisely declined to comment.